What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com, late in the day on Tuesday. Losing track of my days there. The only real news today is the Packers are losing a longtime scout. Been with the Packers since 2013. Alonzo Dotson is headed to the Jets, an undetermined role at this point, but he is making the move. Brian Gutekunst, the general manager, had stated at the draft that they were planning on adding some people to the staff after the draft. That is typically when things happen in personnel. He acknowledged he was a little light staff-wise, but now it would appear he's got another hole to fill. So the Packers losing Dotson to the Jets, and Brian Gutekunst yet to make some moves. But as far as the roster and the team goes, not much to report. Bit of a lull here as far as on-field action, but OTAs will be starting up soon enough. In the meantime, I thought I'd jump on here, as is my wont, and see you fine folks. See what's up, see what's on your minds, see if you have any questions. Hello everyone chiming in the comments, very nice to see you. Columbus, Indiana, what's up? A nice review of Infinity War there, very nice. Hoping Rodgers gets his contract done soon. Yeah, I don't think, obviously with Matt Ryan done, there's not much in the way of outside elements that they need to wait on. But these contracts are not kind of paint by numbers. There are a lot of intricacies and a lot of going back and forth between Russ Ball and David Dunn. So while I don't doubt they're working on it, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes a little bit more time yet. Give us your best John Madden impression. Nobody wants that. Maybe on my personal account sometime after hours when I've had a few. Jeff, what's up? How you doing? Jennifer, hello. Thanks for joining us. Do you see St. Browne starting on the boundary? Drew, definitely. I don't project him inside, at least not to begin with. Now, that said, the Packers are very adamant that they want all their young guys to learn all three positions when they come into camp. It's been that way for quite some time under McCarthy. But I tend to think they'll run him on the outside mostly to begin with. Not that he won't be required to know the stuff in the slot, but for the most part, I think his best chance is to get that perimeter spot nailed down. Any word on Breland, DRC? Nothing as far as outside free agents. I tend to think the Packers will probably get the whole squad together for OTAs and see what they got, and then maybe make a determination that they possibly need to add someone. But the sense I get is they're pretty happy with their perimeter group at this point at cornerback. So I would be surprised if they, if they went outside. Why is no one signing Dez? Well, the Ravens tried to. They offered him, I think it was $7 million for the year, and I think Dez Bryant is really set on trying to stay in the NFC and hopefully really trying to face the Cowboys twice a year, or at least for this year. It was reported that he wanted a one-year prove-it deal so he could try and pump up his stats, etc., and then hit the free agency market again next year at the beginning of it. Something the Cowboys really kind of screwed him on, is releasing him so far into the process. You would tend to think maybe Aaron Rodgers would be a good way of going about doing that, but the Packers have shown no interest. Oren Burks is going to be a big contributor this year. Steve, it's very possible. Again, you guys are going to get sick of me saying it in this offseason, and it's one of the reasons we won't be doing quite as many Facebook Lives once the OTAs start ramping up and once we've seen a couple of these guys on the field. But until they put the pads on and they start going against guys in camp and then the preseason, you can glean little things from what they do in the spring, but a lot of who they're going to be as far as an NFL player, especially their rookie year, won't be able to be determined until we see them in pads going against NFL level competition. Was Green Bay going 7-9 a blessing in disguise? Andrew, that's a really good question. I know a lot has been kind of talked about and written about in regards to if Aaron Rodgers doesn't get hurt, do all these people get fired? And I can't remember who I was talking to. I was talking to somebody who covers the league. a couple days ago, and the thing I said was, I think the Thompson move would have been made, regardless, even if they had, say, gone 12-4, 11-5, and deep postseason run, etc. I still think the Thompson move would have been made. There were rumblings about it last year, about the possibility of him stepping into a scouting role and Elliott Wolf or somebody else taking over. Clearly, it didn't quite happen that way, but there had been rumblings for quite some time. I just think the timing was right there, and that was coming regardless. But now, as far as Dom Capers and the big coaching staff overhaul, that who knows? I mean, if they do indeed go 12-4 and make the playoffs and go on a deep run, I don't think Capers is fired. I don't think a lot of people lose their jobs. And in that case, the question remains, will these changes that McCarthy has made along the coaching staff lead to improvement? And if they do, then you'd have to say, yeah, 7-9, maybe a blessing in disguise long term. Definitely, probably, most likely a blessing in disguise for Mike McCarthy. Seemed to finally give him cover to fire Don Capers and, bring in Mike Pettin, who, as I've said often, I think is an inspired hire. But now they gotta make it happen on the field, and I'm sure McCarthy would like one last, chance at getting to the Super Bowl and winning it before riding off into the sunset, so to speak. Who is Kenny Clark's backup? That's a good question, Dale. They have that rotation there. I think Muhammad Wilkerson and he will kind of switch out as far as when they're playing nose, they'll kind of rotate at nose. I think there's no question that Clark is the starter, and Wilkerson will play both nose and along the line. I think all three spots really. But as far as a true kind of nose tackle backup, maybe Montrevious Adams, although I don't really think he's a true nose. So, but Kenny plays all along the line as well. So, it's kind of a multitude of guys depending on what they want to do. And again, a lot of this is based off of what we saw him do under Dom Capers. Who knows how Mike Pettin will decide to utilize him. Why does this organization take so long to change management? Well, I think a big part of it is continuity tends to breed success. I know Packer fans don't want to hear that because they define, 11-5 deep postseason runs as failure. But you look around the league, there's 20 plus teams that would kill to have a consistent year in and year out output like that. Now, it's frustrating because you're not winning championships. But I think, Mike McCarthy in particular felt he wanted to give Dom Capers every chance. Now, I hear you all guffawing, and he certainly did do that. I think 2 years ago, he felt that Dom hadn't been given enough from the people in personnel. I think last year, the disorganization and the continued problems they had as far as just even getting lined up week after week, down after down, finally, 7-9 gave McCarthy cover to make that move. But, I understand frustrations when it comes to, you see a defense get kind of basically taken advantage of every year in the playoffs by the better quarterbacks in the league. McCarthy wanted to stick with, the coaching staff and the guy he had hired. He hired him over, when he fired Bates, however many years ago. He wanted to give that as much room as possible to work. And obviously, it didn't. And as far as Ted Thompson goes, I think they, were a bit, I don't want to call it, winning's a great deodorant, right? That's what we were just talking about. When you go 7-9, alarm bells go off, especially when, this is a team that, much like the Steelers or the Patriots, they've had a lot of winning, and they've done it a long time with the same staff and the same people in charge. They don't want to change just for change's sake. Now, that said, winning is the deodorant that kind of covers up the stink, and last year I think a lot of the stink got out. And that's not to say, if Rodgers stays healthy, they very well could have been Super Bowl contenders. And I know no one wants to talk about that, but it's true. That's how well he was playing. That's how well they were playing on offense before he went down. And the 4-1 record was no mirage. So, yeah, it's, there's a lot of parts there, a lot of moving parts. And I'm very interested to see how Pettine and McCarthy on a short deal and retooling his offense all kind of coalesces, and how much change there really is going forward. Thank you, Brett Hundley, for a new GM in DC. Well, that's one way to look at it. When will you see Rodgers throw? OTAs, I would imagine, whenever our first look is. So I guess in a week or two. How will Montgomery stack up against last year's rookie running backs? I don't think he'll be in direct competition, actually. I think he'll tend to work in a lot of special kind of packages, mostly third down stuff. I don't think his days, I do think his days as being a first and second down backer, maybe not over, but I think they're severely limited going forward. How is Kevin King and his shoulder? Cody, all signs, all reports are he's doing great, 100%. Of course, that's what we've been told, and that's what the company line has been, both from the team and from the player. We'll see. When they report, you always kind of got to take attendance and see what the story is. You don't have to look much further than I think it was last year when Corey Linsley showed up with an injury, or 2 years ago. That was unexpected. Stuff happens in the offseason on occasion. Guys suffer setbacks. So that's the kind of thing that we'll definitely be looking for when everyone reports back for OTAs. To Mario, I stole Roquan Smith iPad and playbook. Yeah, I saw that. The Bears' first-round pick got his iPad issued by the Bears, stole it. Way to make that first impression. Is Beagle 100%? Travis, that's the word. Again, that's another guy we'll definitely be checking in on. Do we see more 5 wide receiver sets with Philbin back? It's possible. I guess it depends on how fast some of these rookie wide receivers come along and how much development we see out of guys like D'Angelo Yancey and Michael Clark. You can't just go 5 wide for the sake of it. You got to have guys who can play. But, yeah, it's a possibility. Who is your early guess for upset surprise cut this year? I don't know, Franklin. It's always hard to answer that kind of question because, if it's a surprise, you wouldn't see it coming, right? I tend to think Bulaga is still not out of the woods. I think they're saying all the right things, but I could see them making that kind of cutting him prior to camp. I also think Jake Ryan, his position is tenuous. But again, neither of those, I don't think either one of those would be a real surprise. Cody, why all the Reggie Gilbert hype? Because he played really well those 2 weeks. And he looked really good in camp, and a lot of people thought, including myself, that he should have been on the 53. Now that said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he looked like the second coming of Reggie White or anything, but he provided more juice in those 2 games than anything we'd seen from most of the players at outside linebacker for weeks on end. And, McCarthy and Gutekunst acknowledged as much when we were in Indianapolis for the Combine. So, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to solve the problems at outside linebacker and provide a pass rush that has been missing, but I do think he will help. And I do think it's a bit mysterious why he couldn't get onto the 53 last year until they were out of contention. Scott, just Janice exclamation point. I like it. This is not a Cleveland Browns chat, however. Do you see us using more 3-down linemen with our lack of depth at outside linebacker? I don't know if one will really cause the other. I think you'll actually probably see more 4-man fronts with Nick Perry with his hand on the dirt if Mike Pettine kind of goes the way I think he will. He used a lot of 4-man fronts in Buffalo, more so than he did when he was in New York with the Jets, but that was simply because of the personnel he had on hand. I tend to think he'll see Perry for what he is. I think he's stronger as a run defender. I think we all know that. Who has some pass rush, and I think he can play pretty well with his hand in the dirt. So we'll see. What have we heard about Rodgers' contract? Nothing, Zach, except that they're talking. That's about it. Pass rusher is still a weak spot for the Packers. Yes and no. I think they have some guys that we don't really know about yet. Montravius Adams was supposed to provide inside rush. That was supposed to be his kind of calling card, so to speak. He barely got on the field last year due to injury. Vince Beagle obviously missed pretty much the entire offseason and then the first part of the season being on the PUP. They'll be counting on him to develop. Reggie Gilbert, we don't really know what they have there. We have a guy who flashed, definitely, but as far as development goes, Mike McCarthy's already talking him up. So we'll see. I mean, pass rush on paper, maybe, yeah, it's a problem, but let's let these guys hit the field and show what they can do first. Kyler Fackrell, special teams contributor. Timothy, I think that's his way onto the roster at this point. I think you've seen what he can do from scrimmage, which is not much, but especially now that Janice is gone and they probably need some help on special teams, he's done it, and he can excel there. And, we've talked about it a lot in the past. You look at somebody like Jarrett Bush, who stuck around for a long time as a special teams ace who, contributed from scrimmage when, injury struck. I think that's a really good use of Kyler Fackrell. Now, we'll see. We'll see what happens in front of him as far as outside linebacker depth. But, yeah, I think that's his way onto the roster. So is Cleveland becoming Green Bay East? Yeah, it sure seems like it, right, James? They claimed Justin Vogel on waivers, the latest move. So, I don't think you can label it just that, but it's clear that Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith are happy to bring in a lot of the guys they're familiar with from Green Bay, whether it is Demarius Randall, Jeff Janis, or Justin Vogel. All right, everybody, I'm going to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours, but I'll be back tomorrow, barring any breaking news overnight. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.